This conference will now be recorded.
Pete, I'm going to go ahead and turn everything over to you now.
Thank you, Jen. Appreciate your help. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Pete Tesh with the Economic Development Council of St. Lucie County. Welcome to our second webinar, What You Need to Know About the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, now commonly known as CARES. This was recently signed into law. Today, we're going to discuss the federal Paycheck Protection Program and how local businesses should pursue this relief effort. Today, we are very happy that we have the following subject matter experts. Denny Hudson, Chief Executive Officer of Seacoast Bank. Vince Lopresti, Senior Area Manager of the U.S. Small Business Administration. Chris Fogel, Partner with Carr, Riggs and Ingram. Chris will follow up on the payroll tax credits and related items. After Chris's comments, we'll have a very brief Q&A session with the shared selected questions you've submitted to us. We will then close with Jill Marassa, the EDC's Vice President of Business Expansion, and she'll make some closing remarks. The session presentations will roughly go to about 30 minutes, and there will be the Q&A session immediately thereafter. We anticipate the call should be finished right at 12:40 p.m. Jen Dubé is our production manager, and I'll ask her if she has any final housekeeping items for us before we turn it over to Mr. Hudson. Jen?
Thank you, Pete. Anyone who has joined us today, should you have any additional questions, please provide them or your questions in the chat room, and we will get to you with the answers as soon as possible. Thank you.
Great. I'll now turn it over to Denny Hudson. He's had a very busy evening and morning, and still is here to join us to tell us about the Paycheck Protection Program. Denny?
Thank you, Pete, and thanks for inviting me to attend today. I'm happy to be here and really wish all of you on the phone the very best as we kind of navigate this unusual time together. I thought I would start, Pete, if that makes sense, just describing kind of understanding of the program in terms of the general requirements. I won't go into all the detail. You can find a lot of that detail on the SBA website, and I think probably the EDC can probably send out copies of the material that were posted last night. By the way, this material was posted, I think, around 5 or 6 o'clock last night, so we're just now, as a financial institution, understanding exactly what is required. As you know, the program was to roll out today, and the SBA states that they're ready to start processing applications today that the banks would put through. I will tell you up front that we are struggling to be ready, to be honest with you. I would say we'll probably be ready on Monday to start seriously accepting applications, but for our customers. But I'll go over that in a minute. Just very briefly, I think most of you, if not all of you on the phone today, would probably qualify for this program. Requirements, I'm going to go very fast here, 500 or less employees. You had to be in operation February 15th of 20. This includes sole proprietorships or even independent contractors can apply for this. Some of the things would kick you out if you're engaged in any illegal activity. If you're a household employer, which they consider not a business, household employer would be somebody in a household employing folks to work in their household. That is not qualified as a business. You also cannot be subject to any criminal indictment or have been convicted of a felony in the last 5 years. And you cannot presently be delinquent or have defaulted previously on any federal loan in the past 7 years if that loan caused a loss to the government. Also would point out up front, while everybody's probably able to apply, you have to certify that you're actually being impacted by this event. And so if you're in a particular business that is not being impacted, hard to believe anybody wouldn't be, you're going to have to make that certification. Second of all, you can borrow very simply up to 2.5 times of your monthly payroll, including all of the costs of payroll, health insurance, state and local taxes, paid time off, vacation pay, all of those things. But you have to haircut out of that number any amounts that would be paid over that 2.5 month period to any individual greater than $100,000. Also excludes folks that are employed outside of the U.S. The rate of interest on this is very favorable at 1%. The loan would be for 2 years, so we'd have monthly payments paying the entire loan back over 2 years. However, there will be 6 months of payment deferral up front, so the first 6 months you make no payments. I know everybody's curious about loan forgiveness. To the extent that the loan was used, in fact, to pay payroll costs or other general fixed charges in the business, things that are specified in the Act, rent, interest on loans, utilities, and so forth, those amounts can be forgiven. Also, you cannot be forgiven for any amounts paid to individuals making an annual over $100,000 a year, that portion over that amount. However, no more than 25% of the proceeds of the loan can go towards these non-payroll related activities. So there's a limit on that. And finally, there's a forgiveness will be cut back based on the number of people that you have on the payroll during this coronavirus period compared with the people you had on payroll before all of this happened. So if you were to lay off half your staff a week ago, you're not going to, be able to have the entire loan forgiven unless you potentially rehired that staff and so forth. And we can get into the details on that later. I'd like to shift now and just talk for a minute about what's happening in the banks generally, and then I'll tell you what's happening at Seacoast. First of all, the banks have generally been working. First of all, any bank that is currently an SBA-approved lender, and we are, is now approved to distribute funds under this program. We have been a qualified lender for SBA with delegated authority from SBA to approve those loans under the conditions that SBA provides us. Many banks, certainly all the larger banks, are qualified SBA lenders, and you would need to reach out to your bank, number one, to see if they're already qualified, and number two, whether they are intending to participate in this program. Those banks, particularly smaller banks that maybe are not an SBA lender, can very quickly become certified to become an SBA lender if they choose to do so. So it's important for you to talk to your bank about that. So, and second of all, the banks have been struggling to put together this program. We only learned of the actual requirements that we're required to attend to in approving these loans literally last night. We've been frustrated over the last 3 weeks at Seacoast. We stood up a large team. We've transferred folks from other areas of the organization into our SBA group, and they've been working on process flow to determine how we're going to process all of this. We have been providing, if somebody calls, we've been providing with checklists over the last week or so of information that we thought may be required. We're updating those checklists today with the knowledge now of exactly what is required, and I'm going to be redistributing those out to our customers who have already contacted us about the program so that they can put together the information that they need. I would think most banks are in that same category and are probably struggling this morning to try to update that information and get it out to customers as soon as they possibly can. I would say most banks will probably not be in a position to start accepting in funding applications today. Most banks, would be my guess, are going to be hard pressed to get that up and running by Monday. We've had folks working on this 24/7 over the last 2 weeks, 7 days a week. And as I said earlier, we're kind of struggling to put it together. Specific to what we're doing at Seacoast, we are standing up 2 different paths to use for our customers internally. And we're doing that as to the greatest extent possible using digital ways for us to collect this information, because we think there's going to be a very high volume of activity in this. And so we are not yet ready to roll that out. It'll hopefully roll out sometime next week, where we'll be able to send you a link if you're a customer of Seacoast, and that link will allow you to upload the required information that we need to look at to approve these applications. So we'll have more out that around that later in this coming week, probably not sooner than midweek. In the meantime, for all of you on the phone, if you haven't already, you need to prepare payroll information so that the bank you bank with can confirm exactly what your payroll was in 2019. You should have all of your payroll records put together, which I think we'll go over in a little more detail in a minute if there are questions on that, and get that prepared and ready to submit to your bank, because it'll be required for the lender to confirm the payroll numbers that on which you're going to apply that 2.5 times. So I think with that, Pete, I've probably taken up too much time, and maybe throw it back to you so we can hear from some of the other folks.
Thank you so much, Denny. We appreciate the overview. Right now, I'd like to have Vince Lopresti with the SBA to give us his presentation and update. Vince?
Thank you, Pete, for the introduction, and thank you for letting me be on this conference call or this webinar. As Denny stated, we received the interim ruling on the PPP program overnight. If you take a look at the SBA's website, and you had looked at it yesterday, we've updated the information on the website for the coronavirus declaration itself. So when you go to that declaration or that web page, it'll give you different avenues for which to apply for different types of assistance. We've updated a form for the borrowers to complete. So the form that you had yesterday was a sample form. So there's a new form for you to take a look at. As Danny indicated, this is mainly for payroll, and the payroll period starts, the 8 weeks starts after you receive funding on the PPP loan. So we did a webinar earlier this morning. I had several people say, well, do I have to, once I get the money, do I have to hire the people back? And the answer to that is yes, because after 8 weeks, you're going to have to go back to your bank, and you're going to have to show them how much money you've actually spent for payroll for eligibility to have that forgiven in the PPP loan. We've done some changes on the PPP loan. Yesterday it was at 0.5 point. Today it's at a 1% interest rate. So that's changed. That we've also added on there for economic injury loans. So if you receive funds for the EIDL loan, that would be used and calculated as part of the total PPP package, and the PPP will be used to pay back the EIDL. Other than that, as Denny said, we're trying to get this up and running. We're having our banks, going through the process to get this uploaded onto our electronic systems so we can have this done on a smooth basis. If you're looking at it for a lender that's doing the program, other than Seacoast here, there are several lenders out there. Actually, there's a lot of lenders out there. And if you go to the SBA website and you go to the get funding section of that, and then you go to the PPP section, or for the coronavirus, it says to apply for a Paycheck protection program. We have a link there where you can find a lender. So you click on that link, type in your zip code, and it'll give you the lenders that are participating. Now note, this is not an all-inclusive list of lenders participating. It's just that we know can participate, and that list is going to be up by the hour as more and more people and more banks come on there. You can still apply for the economic injury loan application. That is going on. Going back to the PPP, you only allowed to apply for the PPP loan once. Okay, so if you apply for it once, you cannot come back and apply for it again at another lender. It's a one-time offer. Economic injury loan has a expiration date, a deadline of the December 18th, I believe. We've also updated that website earlier this week where instead of uploading application information and all online, you just do a simple 5-step process, takes about 10 minutes. The toughest thing people have been trying to figure out on that is if I'm a service business and no cost of goods sold, what do I put down for cost of sold? It should be zero because you don't have any cost of sold. Go with that. There's also an option in there to check that, hey, I would like to have up to $10,000 of forgiveness on the EIDL, which would be sent to your bank account. They say 3 days. The number of people applying for the EID, I'm sure it's going to take a few more days than that. If you get the EIDL, the $10,000 upfront forgiveness amount of that loan, you will have to go ahead and that will reduce your eligibility of the PPP up to $10,000. Some other type of information that we've just stated. One of them is an SBA debt relief. So we at the SBA have instructed our 7A lenders that if they have a 7A loan books starting last week, we'll start making payments on the 7A loans. We'll pay them for a period of 6 months for all the borrowers on their books that have an existing 7A loan. And also, if you go out and get a regular 7A now, we will the payments of interest on that until the end of September. Other than that, just we're trying to answer questions as much as we can in the office. Note that we're just a conduit for this, so we don't really do eligibility issues or answer eligibility questions. We can kind of point you in the right direction and try to answer basic questions as we're working on behalf of the disaster office, which has to do this for 50 different states. And somebody had mentioned the other day that, across this country, there are probably like 30 million small businesses out there, and I'm sure a good chunk of those are going to be looking for some type of assistance. So I know some of you can apply now and get an answer in 10 minutes, but some of the stuff is going to take a little bit of time. So I ask you to be patient on this and let the process that are in place, get to you and get you an answer as quickly as we can. Also, we have our 800 number for the disaster office has now gone 24/7. So if you call at 2 o'clock in the morning, you're still up, you might have a better chance of getting a hold of somebody. Or somebody called on at 6:30 yesterday in the morning. It's actually got a hold of somebody without a wait. So once again, be patient. And as Denny indicated, we're going to be, doing the EIDLs, and we have a lot of applications in on them. And in the other banks, when they start implementing the PPP, we'll have some just patient, and we'll work through this together. Okay, Pete, with that, I think I've got my time.
Thank you very much, Vince. And just to reinforce with our audience that if there are general questions of businesses, they can contact you locally. General questions.
Right.
Very good. Thank you again, Vince. Now we'll round out the conversation with Chris Fogel with Carr, Riggs and Ingram, and he's going to follow back up on payroll tax credits. Chris, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Pete. I appreciate the opportunity to provide some information on a number of these acts that have just come through. It's overwhelming for those of us that are in the profession of providing advice because it's all coming at one time and there's a number of different things. I mean, we talked about the PPP, which seems to be the most popular program of the day because of the potential grant that's implicit in that application. The one that we don't see being used as much as it might be able to is what Vince referred to as the EIDL, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, of up to $2 million. That does require repayment. It is at a fixed rate of 3.75%, but the payment can be up to 30 years. So depending upon the conditions of different businesses out there, one size doesn't fit all. So you may really need to consult with your advisor as to what is the best program for you. Having said that, Wednesday was the effective date for having the opportunity to get payroll tax credits for several issues. If you have employees that you're paying since April 1st, which was the effective date, sick leave, you are eligible for tax credits, which can be handled by reducing your payroll tax deposit by the amount of the credit. In some cases, the credit may be greater than your payroll tax deposit, and we are currently waiting for a form from the Treasury as to getting additional advance credit on payroll taxes that exceeded the amount of the deposit. To give you an example, for example, if ABC paid $3,000 in sick leave and is otherwise required to deposit $8,000 in payroll taxes, the employer could use up to $3,000 of the $8,000 of taxes it was going to deposit for making qualified leave payments. So you'd make a deposit of 5 instead of 8. But on the other side, let's say ABC paid $10,000 in sick leave and was required to deposit $8,000 in taxes. Then, as I was mentioning earlier, the employer could use the entire $8,000 of taxes in order to make qualified leave payments and file a request for an accelerated credit for the remaining $2,000 via a streamlined claim form, which we have not yet received. So I want to make certain that for those of you that have employees on staff as of April 1st that are currently out either on sick leave or on emergency family medical leave, is to make certain that you take advantage of the tax credit that is available to you. And that will come into play with the PPP grant that you get, because if you have taken advantage of the credit, that will reduce part of the qualified expenditure that you're getting from the PPP program. But still, I mean, that's at this point in time, anything that you can get that's going to help relieve a financial burden on your company, you want to take advantage of it as best you can. Pete, I think that pretty much is it. We covered this credit in our last webinar, and the only thing that really was had to be affirmed to many of our listeners was that it was effective beginning April 1st. So you have time before you make your next payroll tax deposit, if you do have employees that are currently on sick or medical leave, to adjust your payroll tax deposits accordingly.
Great. Well, thank you, Chris. Now we will go into the Q&A session, and we have selected approximately 11 questions that are representative of the great submittals that we got from you all. So I'll start with Denny Hudson, and we have a couple of questions for you, sir. One is, how will the loan forgiveness be determined?
First of all, I'm not a lawyer or an expert. I just read the material last night, so things will change as we go through time. But generally speaking, the loan forgiveness will be kind of a second thing you will need to do with your bank. So you'll go back to the bank that provided you with the funding, and as we get through this period of time, the 2.5 months that you now have funding for your payroll, you would add together and provide evidence to the bank of the actual payroll that you actually spent over that period of time, beginning on the date you get the loan through the 2.5 months following. We would need to confirm through the records that you would provide us what actual payroll you paid. We would want you to calculate any a deduction against that for anybody you paid more than an annualized amount of $100,000 per year. So if it was a quarter, that would be anybody you paid more than $25,000 during that period of time. That part is not forgiven. Then we would also add together, you would provide evidence with us as to the permitted costs in the Act, which include rent, interest, not the full payment, but interest paid on any loans you have outstanding prior to this period of time, and any utility payments that you make, and as I said earlier, any rent payments and so forth. We would add all that together, confirm the numbers with the evidence that you provided us, and then we would submit back to the SBA a permission to refund that amount of the loan. So generally speaking, when I've looked at it, if you, in essence, had 30 people on payroll last year, and you maintained all 30 people on payroll this year or more, it is highly likely that you will get the entire loan forgiven if you can prove that you did that and prove that those other payments were made, kind of legitimate payments. If you reduced your payroll and only had half of those people on the payroll, then we would make that calculation, and it would likely potentially be less than the entire loan that would be forgiven. We submit that to the SBA, and the SBA is required within just a few days to return to us an amount of money equal to that amount, and then we would take that and pay down or pay off that loan. Then we would be responsible if there was a residual left on the loan. We would be responsible for collecting those payments over the remaining term of that loan. And recall, the day you sign the loan, it's for a term of 2 years. And so whatever time frame is left, we would amortize that over that remaining time frame. So, good chance for those of you that are attempting to maintain and continue to pay folks, good chance you would have the entire thing, paid off and forgiven by the federal government. Don't forget what I said at the outset, only 25% of the loan amount can go towards those non-payroll items. So if, for example, you laid off half your employees, paid all of those other permitted items, there's a 25% of the total loan amount that can go into those items. But the bank would work with you to help you through that. There'll likely be a checklist created that you can follow. These are the following things we need you to provide us. You upload that into our systems, and we would look at it, confirm that it made sense, that it was accurate, and then we would submit that to the SBA.
Thank you, Denny. You touched on this subject earlier in your presentation, but it's worth bringing back. The question is, we understand that Friday will be the first day banks will be able to assist with the application process. Can these be submitted online, or do you need an appointment? There is also limited information on what materials beside the application that need to be submitted.
Right. If you contact us, we will provide you with a checklist, so you'll get that list. I don't know whether we've updated the checklist yet. As of 11 o'clock today, we were still working on it. But at some point, you'll get an updated checklist to help you through that. Yes, we are pushing ourselves at our bank to have all of this be uploaded online so that we do not need to meet with you, so that it can happen much more quickly. As of this moment, those systems have not been rolled out. We've been working on it, as I said earlier, for a little over 2 weeks, almost 3 weeks, and we are expecting to get some of that stood up sometime next week. So what should you do today? Today, you can easily go to the SBA website, read about the program, and start assembling your documents around proving what your payroll is. and proving that you paid that payroll, getting that assembled and ready to go. If you have a relationship manager or a loan officer you're already working with at your bank, I would recommend you try to make contact with that person probably by email today, if you can, to see what kind of information they can provide you today, so that you can hopefully put together the material once and not have to redo it after you get a little further down the road. For us, we would be receiving that material today, potentially by email, from our customers. Again, as I said, if you know somebody that is your relationship manager, you could certainly get that started, the conversation started today by email. You could even provide some of the data and the information today by email. I doubt we will be funding any loans today, because we are just now standing up the checklists and the processes internally that we need to make sure we do this right. We will be working over the weekend to finalize all of that, and I think we'll be in a better position on Monday. But I wouldn't hesitate, if you have the information already, to start trying to get it to the bank. If you don't have a loan officer or a relationship manager that you're familiar with, or somebody else you know at the bank that you can email this to, my recommendation would be to try to call the branch, or even stop by the branches where you bank, where you have people that know you, and check with those folks. They may be able to help you and provide you with some information as well. As you know, most of banks' call centers today are slammed with business, slammed with incoming calls, and the wait times are unacceptably long today. I would say ours included, even though we have almost doubled our staff in the last 3 weeks in those centers. And as you recall, as you all certainly know, we're dealing with the whole coronavirus safety issue with those employees as well. So, fastest path for those that have contacts at the banks are to contact those contacts and start the process. And I'd say for us, many already have. We have a very high volume already of people that have actually already submitted us information.
Thank you, Denny, for a very detailed response. I'm going to go next to Vince. And I believe this question refers to the PPP loan. Is there a minimum or maximum amount for the loan, Vince?
There is no minimum on the loan, but the maximum amount will be $10 million.
It looks like this loan only applies to full-time employees. What about part-timers? Should I pay them as I wait for the loan to go through, or lay them off?
This loan is for full-time equivalent. So if you read in there, it's asking you for your full-time equivalent. Now there's a calculation formula for full-time equivalent. The best place I could say is go Google the term full-time equivalent. But basically, a full-time employee is anybody that works on average 30 hours a week during a month. A part-time employee is anybody that works below that number. So say you have 10 employees that work more than 30 hours a week. So those are 10 full-time employees. And then if you have other employees that work on average 20 hours a week, you would add all those hours up for those, divided by 120, which is going to be just the number 120. I don't know where they got 120, but that's the number they said to use. So 120, I guess it's 30 times 4. And then whatever you have for that, add it to your full times, and that gives you your full-time equivalent. So you can still pay part-time employees under this, but you have to count them as convert them into a full-time equivalent. So that's how we calculate that. It's a little messy, but some of the formulas, and there's a couple Excel spreadsheets online that you can use for that.
And the full-time equivalent calculation, I guess you're referring to, would be important in terms of the end calculation for forgiveness, because we compare the number of employees today versus then. Is that why you're saying that?
Yeah, I think that's what it is. Want to make sure there's not people just don't do full time. It's full time and part time. So you're calculating what your employee base was for the disaster. So, okay, how many of those do you want on payroll going forward for the next 8 weeks? So you can still pay the part-timers.
So just to be clear, if you have part-time employees, they are today included in your payroll. And when you apply for the loan, you would include the amounts of money paid to those part-time employees to set the size of the loan. Is that correct?
Right, because you're looking at that to figure out what your number of employees are to figure out how much you really need.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you, Vince. Denny touched on this question before, but I believe it bears repeating. Can any part of the forgivable loans be used for things such as store rent, vendor invoices, or other business expenses, or is it just for payroll?
You can use it, at least 75% has to be for payroll related expenses. You can use it to pay rent. You can use it to pay, if you have interest on a loan, you can use it for the interest on that, and you can use it for utilities. We haven't got a clarification as to what they say utilities are, so my assumption is that they're just basically accounting for gas, water, and electric as a utility bill.
Thank you. The next question is, where and how can we apply and find lenders participating in the SBA Paycheck Protection Program?
If they go to our website, the SBA.gov, and look under the what was the site I gave you before? There's a site up there on our page for funding options. If you go to that and drop on down, there's a box over there that says, find lenders. Just type in your zip code. Under funding programs, you go to Corona Relief Options, and then you click on the PPP, and it has a drop down as you walk down through it. It has a walk down to show you where the find a lender link is. Now, as I said before, not all lenders that are doing a PPP are up here yet. They're still trying to go through all the 50 agreements of outstanding and add lenders by the hour onto the system.
Thank you.
Yeah, if I can, Pete, if I can talk to that. Some of the businesses have run into difficulty where certain banks that they do business with said we're not accepting. So I think it's going to be important for them to quickly find those alternative sources because there are certain banks who are accepting, but they're not taking on new customers. They're handling their existing customers. So you've got to really find out if the lender on that site is accepting new businesses. And I know that this morning I was on a conference call with our firm, and some Hancock and I think Synovus are setting up special portals for people who are not able to get on, let's say, with the regular banks. And there's others, but that's two of the larger banks that we found out that are creating a portal for those that have been denied from their existing bank and are unable to get with another bank.
Yeah, and we're adding fintech companies on there. People, with certain financial backings to show that they've done enough business loans or have enough in the portfolio experience to do this on a temporary basis. So there will be we'll be adding some non-bank lenders as we go through this process too, to process these and to do these for like the next 3 months.
By the way, when I clicked in to find eligible lenders and put in my zip code, it popped up some of the local banks, obviously, but it did not pop up, the Wells Fargo, B of A's, Chase's, and I'm certain those large banks are participating in the program.
They are. And the problem with that is that it's picking just the localized banks in Florida. Somebody was asking about First Citizens Bank, which is based out of Raleigh. I know they're doing it, but it's just, they haven't got that to all locations yet. So it's up, but it's not completely accurate. So this is one of those things we're going to have to call the bank or take a look at their website to see if they're participating.
Frankly, I cannot imagine any bank not participating in this, given kind of what's going on here.
I agree with you. It would be very bad publicity.
Right.
I'm not going to harm the ones that I know for certain. I will keep my mouth quiet.
Yeah, so that one surprises me.
Thank you.
And I bet you they'll change their mind. by the end of the day, but we'll see.
Thank you, Vince. Going to move over to Chris Fogel for a couple of quick questions and then close. Chris, do independent contractors count as employees for purposes of the PPP loan calculations?
You know, that's a great question, Pete, because initially in the guidance, independent contractors that work closely with the business were considered as an equivalent employee. But the guidelines that came out last night were very explicit that independent contractors cannot count as an eligible employee. As a matter of fact, the reason for that is because those independent contractors can apply on their own behalf, but they cannot submit theirs until next Friday, April 10th.
Great, thank you. I know we're running out of time. I want one last question, and any of our presenters can respond to that. Is the refinancing of the economic injury disaster loan into a PPP loan available without penalty? I've learned there is no prepayment penalty on the EIDL. However, is there a penalty or series of fees imposed in refinancing the loan?
No.
Okay, very good. Can I apply for more than one PPP loan?
No.
No.
When will I have to get paying principal and interest on my loan?
6 months after the date of the loan is when the period begins for the commencement of the loan. And the interest accrues at 1%. It's not very much, but the interest accrues the date you receive the money.
Thank you. Vince, Chris, Denny, thank you so much for
Hey, Pete, could I just say one thing?
Yes,
Pete?
sir.
I
Yes.
want to add something, though, about can I apply for more than one PPP loan? The answer is no. Some of the listeners may have 2 or 3 companies that they've set up. They need to treat the 2 or 3 companies as one when they make the application. So it's what we call aggregation rules. So you aggregate the 3, 4, maybe 5 entities that you have under common ownership as one loan applicant.
Great, Chris. Thank you for that clarification. Appreciate that. Again, thank you to our presenters. It's been a very informative session. I would now like Jill Marassa, the EDC's Vice President, to make some closing remarks. Jill?
Thank you, Pete. Good afternoon, everyone. First, I want to echo Pete's comments. We cannot thank you enough, Denny, Chris, and Vince, for your valuable time and support to the business community today. We know you're all so busy. For the community, we're going to continue our special webinar series each week with subject matter experts as we continue to navigate these programs through the federal, state, and local level. As you can imagine, our team here at the EDC has been hyper-focused on business assistance and response efforts for both employers and employees. It's been a tough week. We have been learning from the business community, as you are all enduring, of accelerated layoffs and furloughs, and employees as well taking FMLA in St. Lucie County. Just yesterday or the day before, the DEO had noted there were over 300 unemployment claims just in the last 2 weeks, which is actually more than the total of claims in 2019. And, that's actually the population of St. Lucie County. And that's also with a system that just cannot handle the demand of claims. The governor actually executed an order yesterday that they're actually going to be taking unemployment paper claims because that's how much the demand is needed, and the system just can't handle that. So if you're in need of the access to capital for payroll, for operations, for anything else, there are 3 different programs through our partners, the SBDC and the 2 SBA programs. If you're experiencing workforce reduction, we encourage you to please reach out to us. We will provide you first with reliable information, because there is some information out there that is not as reliable. We want to make sure that folks have the right information, and we will use every access that we have to every resource and partner to help you and your employees during this time. With our hotline, we have a hotline set up at 772-336-6250, or you can email the EDC at info@youredc.com, or you can reach out to any one of us personally. If you know us, you could check our website and you can contact us at any time. Additionally, for those that are undergoing workforce reduction or have employees that are calling you and stressing that they cannot get unemployment claims, that is a true issue going on in our community. We really want to make sure that folks have access to basic services. We encourage you to call 211, give them the information for 211, give them the information for the website. The website is 211palmbeach.org/coronavirus. There is a website that is directed for each of our counties, so they can click on St. Lucie County, or for those of you that may be in Martin County, and for those in Indian River County. But we have been using that webpage with our employers who are furloughing or downsizing, because it is a one-stop shop to make sure that people have basic needs for food and financial insecurity until they can get some unemployment funds, or until you're able to bring them back on the payroll through one of the lending programs. So we appreciate your time today, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Jill. And I would just like to reinforce what Jill said about the EDC's website. Our business assistance portal has just about all the information, or at least links to the information that have been discussed today. Again, that's youredc.com, and it's our business assistance portal. Jill also mentioned the 211 helpline. That information is also available, and please reach out to us if there's anything we can do for you. Thank you for participating in our webinar series this afternoon. We wish you the very best, and the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Pete.
Thank you.